Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Today's guest is going to absolutely blow you away. Susan Leahy is my guest today, and her story is absolutely unbelievable. And the energy and the enthusiasm that she brings to this interview, to her career, and just to her life in general is beyond inspiring. She spent over 15 years inspiring people from corporate audiences to college audiences, all age groups, all types. Now, she has a special focus and a special emphasis on empowering women to step into their greatness and create the life they want in this world. But I can tell you, although that may be part of her focus, her message is universal. Men and women alike, young and old, can benefit from the things that she shares. In today's interview, she's going to touch on a variety of different mentalities, ideas, perspectives that I think will totally rock your world. So you're going to hear about how she inspired me to be a better person after I saw her give a live speech at an event I went to earlier this year. You'll hear what she defines as the real world and how once you recognize what the real world really is, it'll allow you to step into your greatness right here, right now. You're going to learn about how one phone call changed her life forever and totally shifted the trajectory of her life in general. You're going to hear her thoughts on getting an MBA, which is a very important, big question for everyone in this audience is, do I need to go back to school? Do I need to get an MBA? So you'll get to hear Susan's perspective on what an MBA can offer you, especially for the young women who are considering getting an MBA. You'll also hear Susan's advice on dating, on what it is that women really want out of a relationship, and how both men and women can do a better job of creating an environment that sets their partner up for success, but also sets you up for success so that ultimately you win, your partner wins, and the relationship as a whole wins. So another huge question that often hits young adults in their early 20s is, when am I going to meet the person of my dreams? When am I going to meet the person I'm going to marry? Well, Susan is going to share some amazing advice on how to find the person that you're going to marry, but also you're going to hear why Susan doesn't believe that the one exists. So, guys, this interview today is chock full of relationship advice, professional advice, but overall, Susan is just a fireball of energy. I don't even know the word, like a firecracker. I mean, there's just so much explosive, powerful, positive energy emanating from her that you can't not be affected by it. So take the time to listen to this interview today. Just get started, and I can guarantee, I'll almost guarantee you're going to get hooked by Susan, the wonderful person she is, and the energy she brings to the world. So, as always, guys, thank you for listening. I love you guys. It is so much fun and such a fantastic journey that we're on, getting to do this together. And right now, I'm recording this intro in Sao Paulo, Brazil, living out a dream. And so thank you guys for all your support. Thank you for helping me to build this life and create this lifestyle. And again, if there's anything I can do for you, you know where to find me. So, guys, without any further ado, I would love to introduce you to Susan Leahy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. So today, my guest is a young lady by the name of Susan Leahy, and she has a wonderful story to tell and an amazing message to share with the world. And my hope is that I can help you guys become exposed to her and the wonderful insights that she has to share. So if you want to learn a little bit about Susan, you can head over to susanleahy.com, but I'm going to give you a little bit of her bio and her background right now. So she has been working to inspire corporate and college audiences for over 15 years. So she's a communication specialist, and her message revolves around taking personal responsibility for how you choose to show up, communicate, and participate in your life. So this is something that we can all benefit from at any stage in our lives, at any stage in our careers, but especially for you young adults listening, and for me included, when you can learn these habits early, it is going to set you apart from the rest of the world leaps and bounds. So Susan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Brian, thank you so much. I was sitting there cheering you as you were saying this. Set yourself up for success. Learn these skills today.
Exactly. It's such a common misconception that I held when I came out of school, that to be successful and to become the person I want to be comes later. It's like now I just kind of do, and then later I'll figure out and learn and become.
And the reality is so different that you can be who you want to be today, and you can start that journey today to become greater, stronger, and more impactful to people than you've ever been. And one personal thing I want to share about you, Susan, before we dive into the interview, is I was fortunate enough to see Susan speak at a recent seminar, and she had such an amazing, powerful, energy-filled message. And trust me, you're going to get that in this interview. She is a ball of life. So you're probably going to be standing up and jumping around during or after this interview. But one thing that she does as a keynote speaker that was so powerful for me was she has a message around empowering women in particular to step into their greatness, to let go of the fear or the past stories they've been told, and really own who they are and grow into that to spread a powerful message. But what she also teaches is powerful principles on self-love and on sharing. And what this did for me was, after the speech, I went up to her and I said, Susan, honestly, your speech made me want to be a better guy so that I could attract the type of girl who loves herself in the way that you describe. So, Susan, thank you for that gift, because that was a life-changing, powerful message for me.
I remember that moment, Brian. It really meant a lot to me, because it is about, who you can attract and who you're bringing into your life. And it really starts with the most important relationship that you'll ever have, and that's the relationship you have with yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And what was so interesting for me was there's so many instances where, and we all do this at some point or another, but I found myself being like, well, I'm just not meeting the right girls, or they're not around me, or there aren't any girls in this area to meet. And then when you realize, okay, one, there's a lot of work that we all have to do inside that we are afraid to do or afraid to look inward. But then when we start doing that work and embracing who we are and then loving the life that we live, we attract those people kind of naturally into our existence. So it's really kind of an amazing story. So before we get into all that, because you weren't always the Susan that is touching lives and sharing keynote speeches to thousands and thousands of people, and that's the story that I want to tell, because of course we're going to get into that and celebrate all the amazing things you're doing today. But first, I always like to start out with where you were at college graduation. So if you could tell us a bit about where you were physically, what you were studying, and what your feelings were about the real world as you came up on college graduation.
So I had a tremendous college experience. Like, I really did enjoy and get the most out of college. It was an awesome time for me. And I'll tell you, I did go to a college that was a commuter campus, and so getting students involved, it was always like it always seemed like the same 20% of students getting involved, and I was in that percentage for sure. I actually was the student body president of my college, and when I graduated, I was really leaving what I felt like was a family. And so as I kind of went through graduation, I remember feeling like it was kind of a blur. I couldn't believe it was over. There was so much buildup and thinking about going to college, and then smash cut to, here they go, they hand me a degree in food marketing, agricultural business management, and I am now done. Mm-hmm. And I remember it feeling kind of not real. The end of my college career, while I had a great time in college, the end of my college career was really tumultuous. I had broken up with a really, he was my love, a college love of mine. And so that was really crazy. So it felt like kind of my love life was in turmoil. My mother had been diagnosed with cancer. And she actually had been diagnosed with cancer the year I graduated. I could have run for ASI president another term, but I decided not to, because I just wanted to be with my mom and felt like I needed to just finish. And so that was interesting for me. I went from being really involved, really active, and having this title and this position to just finishing up the classes, being a student, but also being a student that was dealing with a lot of emotional stuff. My heart had been broken. I was really in love, but I knew that the guy that I was with wasn't the right guy, and we weren't meant to be together, but it still didn't mean it didn't hurt. And then to find out that my mom had, chronic lymphoma is what she had, CLL, was really kind of mind-bending. And then it
Right.
What is the real world?
And
Haven't been in the real world?
yeah, exactly. That I think is a very important point that you just touched on. Is so often, I mean, I remember being a senior in college, and on multiple occasions you get these guys and girls who've just graduated. They come back to visit, they're coming back for a football game or what have you, and they go, enjoy it while it lasts, because once you get to the real world, all the fun's over, and once you get to the real world, it's done.
And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that we could say right now, is that if you can embrace right here, right now, that you're in the real world, then you're going to show up and you're going to be more real in it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a belief that what you're doing is getting you ready for something next, then you're not going to participate at the same level. The reality is your life is happening right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And your life is as real as it's ever going to be. The future isn't real. The past doesn't exist. The only thing that's real is right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as students, I think sometimes there's this idea of, oh, well, when I have to get a job or when I'm going to the real world, it is real. The way you're interacting in your classes, the way that you're interacting with your friends, that it's just nothing but you practicing your life. You're in it right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that message. And what's really interesting to me is this is something I feel we tend to do throughout our lives. And at some point or another, we get a click, because so for a student, it's okay, yeah, later in the real world, because right now it's not real. I'm just like, I'm in this happy bubble. I'm not in real world. And the real world may be scary or different or more serious. So I'm not there yet. Then you get into the real world, and then we start to make this distinction of, well, there's work me and then real me. And it's like as if those 8 hours a day to 10 to 12 hours a day that you're spending at the office is not you, and it doesn't really count. That's not really, I have 80 years to live, give or take, and that doesn't count. So it's like, exactly to your point, when you're able to just look at all of this wonderful, beautiful, crazy, mixed up experience that we have as real, then you start to show up differently.
It's real. It's real. Like, don't let anybody rob you of the realness of your life, and it is your reality. And I think that that's one of the things that I've learned on this journey, is that I get to make it up.
Mm-hmm.
That there is no standard plan with respect to how you should live your life, and that it's your reality, and you get to really make it up. You get to really make it up, and I think that was one of the, I did after I graduated from my undergraduate degree, I did want to pursue higher education. I went in, I got my master's.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started getting my master's in public relations at one university, and I realized I wasn't enjoying myself. And so this is another kind of tip that I somehow picked up along the way that I've integrated into my life from a very young age, is that I deserve to feel good. If what I'm doing doesn't feel good, then I figure out something else to do that's going to support me in feeling good. And so I was getting a degree, a master's in PR, and it wasn't feeling good. And I started, and this is literally what I did. I looked at people who are doing what I do, what I wanted to do, which was doing training development, being a professional speaker, and I started calling people, people that I didn't know. I went online, went to companies that I thought looked interesting, and I found people's names that reminded me of maybe people I knew, and I literally made cold calls and started asking people, how are you doing what you're doing? And I'm not joking, this one call changed my life. I pressed an extension for a woman named Kim, but I thought it said Ken, and Ken is my dad's name.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'll talk to Ken. And a woman named Kim picked up the phone, and she then told me about a program up in Seattle called LEOS, which is the Leadership Institute of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up becoming the master's program that I signed up for. I literally hung up the phone with her, went online, researched this program, quit the master's program that I was in, and then changed my entire life and started a program up in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all because I was just making phone calls and asking people questions. So that's probably, one, it's already real. And number two, you've got to stay open and stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
And just ask questions. And I continue to do that. I'm now in my 40s, and I continue to just ask questions. And I think that helps kind of illuminate your path quicker than You just need to be curious so that you can find out as much information, right? And move in the direction that feels good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is asking about information and trying things and sampling and actually striking out and giving it a whirl. It's like, it's amazing. I know you can't do that for every single situation, but for those things that you can't do specifically at this moment, you can always call somebody, you can always reach out, you can send an email. It's amazing how connected we are. And so one thing that my dad has always said to me that really aligns with what you're saying right now is, he said he thinks one of the greatest compliments you can give a person is that to tell them that they are eternally curious.
Yes.
Because when a person is constantly discovering and growing and reinventing, that is a hugely inspiring thing for anyone watching who's fortunate enough to be around that person and take in their journey. And Susan, before we continue on your story, I do have a specific question for for myself and for the young crowd that's listening to this. What are your thoughts on getting an MBA? Because I've heard a bunch of different insights and inputs. What is your recommendation or your insight on the value of an MBA for the young adults coming into the quote-unquote real world?
Okay, and I'm going to just speak, of course, from my experience, and as a woman, for me, it was priceless. And the sweet irony of my life is I'm the youngest of 4 children, and I'm the only person in my family to go to college. And you know what's so interesting is I'm not only the only one to go to college and get a degree, I'm the only one to go and get her master's. So I now have a master's of arts in applied behavioral science. So I don't even have an MBA, I have an MA in behavioral science. And I am the only one of my 4 siblings without a job.
Wow.
And so I want you to hear that, is that my degree enabled me to be a greater creator. And I have my own business, and I've been self-employed for the past 15 years, and I am making it up. And I feel like that's what my education gave me, was really just, the personal permission to just feel even more confident in my own ability to make it up. And so as your listeners are listening, the goal isn't to go and get a degree and get a job and get married and have kids. The goal is to get a degree and be curious and be the creator and make up a life that feels good.
And also, what I think this ties in so nicely is what you had said before, is you found ways to make life feel good. And if it didn't feel good, you modified until it felt good or it felt great. So in that vein, for all the listeners, keep that in mind, because if you're telling yourself you need an MBA to be good enough, or it feels like it's stress and strain, recognize that that's not creating good energy and good excitement and power in your life. And you might be able to just go take a seminar or do what Susan did and reach out to and connect with individuals who are doing what you want to do to get an inside track or understand things better. And for those of you that don't have access to maybe a college education, or it's outside of reach right now due to financial reasons or whatever, the internet is always there. So you can self-educate in a way that helps you build and grow.
It wasn't available in a way that wasn't available years ago. So, I mean, and I don't believe that everybody needs to go to college. I think that it really is about giving yourself permission to step fully into whatever experience that you're having. Because if you passively experience college and you passively move through that experience, then you're going to probably passively move through the experience of having a job. And then you're going to passively move through being married. Do you want to be passive or do you want to be active? And it's easy to be passive. It's easy, it's safe, it takes less energy, but it doesn't help you construct the life you want. And that's one of the things that I think is so important about this, is that it's like, to have an MBA or not have an MBA, there's going to be people, you can show me 100 people who don't have degrees and they're multi-billionaires, and 100 people who do and they're billionaires. But again, I think it's about who you're being in the life that you're creating. And I think that's the exciting part. You are the creator, and like, get excited about what you're creating. I will say, Brian, though, for me, getting a master's as a woman was awesome. I think that it did enable me to get the first few jobs that I had at the level that I had, because I had an MBA, and I got my MBA when I was in my MA when I was in my 20s, and taken away from me. I always have a master's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I recommend it. I think it's great. If anybody has an inkling that maybe they want to do it, I say go for it. And doing it when you aren't married and you don't have kids is it just your life is less complicated. And so once you have it, you have it. And so yes, I hope I don't want to tell people they have it or they need it, but I know for me as a woman, I really liked having it, and I'm glad that I got it when I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm. And just on that note, in terms of taking action now, while you're in your 20s, while you're young, single, it's a very interesting concept where we talk about that we're going to do all those things we want to do later, which I believe is something that I often use to procrastinate, is where I say, yeah, I'm going to write that book, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But when you recognize that you have the ability to do it now, and also odds are your life is probably the least complicated it's going to be. I know this is speaking in generalities, but right now in my life, I'm 25. I have no wife, no kids, no girlfriend. So, I'm pretty much just out here striking out into the world on my own. And so being able to move with a job and travel a lot and write the book that I've written and get these things started, to your point, Susan, I haven't had to ask permission. I haven't had to create time for, because when I do have a family and do have a wife and kids, that's going to be so important to me, and I'm going to need and want to create time for that. For now, I can choose to be selfish in a productive and healthy way and do the things that I want to, and hopefully through pursuing the things that I love, we'll meet the woman I'm meant to, and then have those experiences so we can grow together. So I think that's a really crucial lesson for everybody listening, is don't wait for success, and you don't need to accept the story that success is something that comes later. It can be something you choose to find way before everyone else. To Susan's point, whose story do you want to go by? Do you want to read someone else's story that's already been written, or do you want to write your own?
That's right. And what I love about what you're saying is it's not about waiting to become successful, because success is never something that's done passively. Successful people, and I will say this, it's not just about being busy. It's about truly doing things that you love and really enjoying the process and finding joy and finding energy and finding love and all of that kind of, and being in love and loving yourself and trying new things and stepping outside your own personal comfort zone. And that's all I mean, that's what I still talk about. It's funny, my husband, when we kind of talk about our college experiences, the one thing he says to me is he's like, I really wish I would have gotten more involved. Is that you'll never run into a person who says, I really got too involved. But you will hear people time and again in their lives reflect on an experience they have, and they will say, oh man, I wish I would have gotten more involved. Oh man, I wish I would have raised my hand. Oh man, I wish I'd have walked up to that girl in the bar. Oh man, it's never like, oh man, I hate that I was, I walked up to that girl in the bar. It's the exact opposite. It's like, okay, I got struck down, but you know what? You don't live with the regret of not doing it.
Right. And it's that feeling of not knowing, that uncertainty of what could have been, I think is one of the most easily off-putting feelings. It's like any other feeling. We can choose how we respond to it, but it's those types of situations. I mean, because I've been there plenty of times where, man, I should have just gone and talked to you. And it's when you're sitting on your couch alone on a Saturday night, you have a beer, and you're like, I wonder.
I wish I would have.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, my husband says that to me. I wish I would have gotten more involved when I was in college. And I'll be honest, when I look at him, I'm like, I don't have that regret. And I'm really glad I don't. I'm really glad I don't. And for me, I think that that's the way that I have really run my life. And my parents gave me permission to be my mom was really involved. My mom was amazing with respects to just, Susan, get involved, get out there. People need and want your energy, and you need people's energy. And she was amazing at really setting the stage for me at a young age about the importance of just getting out there, getting up, getting involved. And I thank her for that, because it has been a pattern in which I have lived my life, and it's served me well.
And, well, very well. I can tell just from knowing you and just seeing who you are and the energy you bring to the world. But I also want to touch on, I think it's very interesting how every time, in most scenarios, and I mean, I do this all the time, where you look at a situation, you want to talk to that person, you want to schedule an interview with so-and-so, you want to meet with this person at work, you want to walk up to that girl in the bar.
Yeah.
And our minds immediately go to the negatives of what bad things could happen. I could look stupid. She could shut me down. She could throw a drink in my face. And then we start building up the negative scenario into this, I mean, way worse than it probably ever would be. And then in reality, when we actually try and strike out, it's amazing how so many times we're surprised by how well it goes.
Yes.
So I think it's fascinating how the stories we tell ourselves, you know, I often ask the question to myself, why are you telling this story to yourself? Because a lot of times we don't even recognize that this is just an idea or a concept that we were introduced to and we believe, whether it's from insecurity or fear or doubt. And we easily could say, hey, I'm going to walk up to her and it's going to go great. And if it doesn't, no problem, you know.
And can I also say, this is what we need to understand, is it doesn't matter how it goes once you walk up to her. The lesson in life is that you keep walking up. And you then be a generous offer when you get there. You know, it's like if you say something schmarmy and just want to get in her pants, of course she's going to, like, you know, give you a backhand. But if there's a sense of then you get up there, you go in front of her, and you're a generous offer around, you deserve to feel good and I deserve to feel good. You know, it's that sense of like, let's have some fun. Let's find a way where we can both have some fun and feel good. What do you want to do today, right? So it's a sense of you're including her in your vision of wanting to create something that feels good, right? So it's not just one-sided.
Right. It's not just me getting mine or getting that feeling. It's how do we connect as people, which is what we all ultimately want to do, and find joy.
Women want to feel good just as much as men want to feel good.
Right.
But what women really desire and want, and we can talk about this at a physical level, a spiritual level, an emotional level, is that people want to feel good. And if you can be an advocate for someone else wanting to feel good, then they're going to trust you more. You know, and so it's a sense of like, how do you hold that? It's not just about what you want, but it's also about, you know, being in the space of looking at what does the other person want. And I think that just comes with time and energy, because the reality is some guys aren't at the space and some women aren't at the space where they're wanting to pull someone else into their life yet. It is a personal experiment. So. Yeah,
and I think it's really important to recognize, like, for the listeners, really tune into what Susan is saying here, because she's not saying that it's what one person wants or the other. Like, she's not saying guys need to walk up and push their agenda or that they need to do everything the girl says. It's giving and taking. It's a mutual exchange of fun and sharing in an experience. And it doesn't mean you need to walk up thinking, okay, well, she's going to be my wife. It's just look to share in that experience and find joy in it. And to Susan's point, if you walk up with that mentality, looking to share, no matter what happens, you've shown up in the world the way that you want to, and that is the most important thing.
Yeah, huge. And I love what you said. It's like, stop looking for a husband, stop looking for a wife, and start having some fun. Do you know how you get married? You get married by being a fun person. You know what I mean? So it's a sense of, you know what, all I'm going to focus on right here, right now, is that I'm going to try to find a way to have fun with this person. And then if I'm having fun in this moment, then I'm going to have fun in the next moment. Then I'm going to have fun in the next moment. And if you're enjoying the moments, then all of a sudden you look at each other and you go, hey, we're having so much fun in all these moments, maybe we should get married. And see more fun moments, you know? And so it's the sense of, you know, you can't create a marriage in a moment. And so I think it's interesting that people are out looking for their husbands and wives, and I think that sets you up for failure.
Yeah, it's looking for that kind of external fulfillment. It's looking for, I'll be happy once I get X. And I mean, I've done that. Not like, marriage is something that I know I'm willing to wait for and grow in a relationship with someone before I get there. But I've done it plenty of times where I'm like, man, I can't find a girlfriend, you know. And it's like, well, most of the times that I'm frustrated in saying that is when I'm sitting on my ass doing absolutely nothing. You know, it's like sitting on my couch, flipping channels, just going, man, you just can't meet any good girls. And it's like, dude, you get your lazy ass up and go talk to one, you might have a chance.
And this is really important. Men and women do this all the time, is that women are so busy calling men pigs.
Uh-huh.
Men are so busy kind of saying there aren't any good girls.
Uh-huh.
That's what you end up manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so if you're sitting there thinking that the vast majority of guys are pigs, then guess what? That's what you're manifesting.
Yep.
I really do believe people are inherently good. And in my relationship, I set my husband up for success. And that's one of the things I tell him. You can never fail with me. You will only succeed. And so it's a sense of like, when I'm with somebody, I'm not setting them up for failure. I'm setting them up for success. Like, I really want them to feel good. I want them to do good. I want them to experience good. And so it has to be generated from you. And you can only really do that if you're setting yourself up for success.
Wow. That's incredibly powerful what you just said, Susan. And for all the listeners, really take note of that, because if you think about your life and you think about the things that you believe, or the stories that you choose to tell yourself, really take a moment to think about it, because there are so many circumstances where two people with very similar backgrounds and life experience can experience the exact same thing and have two totally radically different experiences.
Yeah.
And when you are telling yourself that story of, there's no good girls out there and guys are all pigs, you're going to look for proof, because your brain is an amazing problem-solving machine. And so when you choose to give it that story, this is like if you think about the food you give your body to fuel it to, be physically active, this is the fuel you're giving your mind to be mentally active. If you're constantly telling it, this is what I believe, your brain's going to go, okay, let me help you prove that. Let's create that reality for you.
Yeah. Thoughts become things. What you think is the reality you're creating around yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm going too deep, but I'm going to go there right now. Here we go. Okay, here we go.
I love it.
So my family has recently relocated to Mexico. So I'm now living in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I've uprooted my family from Los Angeles, California. I am living in Playa del Carmen in Mexico, creating a completely different existence. I don't speak the language. I am not driving right now because I can't read the road signs. So my life is pretty isolated. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because this experience hasn't brought my husband and I closer together, right? And the reason it hasn't brought us closer together is because I am isolating myself. Like, I'm isolated right now. I don't speak the language. I'm in a foreign country. I'm feeling a little bit nervous and scared. So what I'm doing is I feel isolated. And so what's interesting is if you're isolated in yourself, then you're isolated from other relationships. That doesn't mean my relationship with my husband is bad right now. It means that I've got some work to do on myself. And so my husband, the other day, we were swimming in the pool. He grabs me, hugs me, holds me, kisses me, and he tells me, God, I feel so guilty that I took you away from. And I looked at him and I said, your guilt doesn't serve me in feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the next piece, is that I don't need someone to feel guilty or sad for me in order to try to make me feel happy. Do we get this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's holding the space of I am okay. I just have to figure my way out of what I'm experiencing in this transition. And so this is for all of your college grads and all of your young people. You're going to go through so many transitions in your life, and you have to let yourself go through the transitions. You're not weak. You're strong. And that you're going to experience so much change, and you have to just let yourself be in it and be with yourself in it so that you can then come out the other side. So many times people just rush through transitions and they don't really kind of get in touch with themselves. Like, what am I going through? How am I feeling? What do I want to feel? What do I want to think or feel? And then really start working towards creating the feeling you want in your life.
Wow. I was totally silent during that because I needed that right now. I'm actually going through a big transition in my life, and it's interesting because it's good things, but I've been finding ways to take the good transitions and make them into bad things. And so that lesson, for me, was incredibly impactful right there, and I'm sure many of the listeners will have that same kind of wow moment is, what do you want to create, and what do you feel, and what do you want to feel? And Susan, I I love the way that you present these messages, because not only is it with enthusiasm and excitement, but it comes from a deep, genuine place. I know that myself and all the listeners, like, no one is listening going like, I don't know, she feels a little inauthentic. It's like the way you deliver it, there's really no question. There's no like, I'm not sure. It's because you're speaking from your heart and from your truth. It's like that allows me and everyone listening to open up more and go like, wow, yeah, and you start to acknowledge your potential.
And the potential comes from the scary place of I don't know. You know, the potential comes from the sense of venturing into something that's outside your comfort zone. Don't live a life where you know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, what's the point? You know, and so it's a sense of allow yourself to really, I don't know, be afraid, feel inadequate, feel overwhelmed, and know that all of those feelings are wonderful contributors for you to be able to finally go, wow, look at where I came from. I made it through. I was strong enough. I now know how to do it. I do speak the language, so it's a sense of it all. You can't be confident without feeling insecure. You can't do it. You can't do it.
And if you are putting on that confident mask, it's like it has no base or substance beneath it to really allow you to ground into that and say, yeah, I'm confident and I believe. It's just kind of I'm confident because nothing bad has happened yet.
Yeah, and I've made sure nothing bad is going to happen because I'm in complete control of my environment. Be the creator. Let it come through you. I think life is an exciting place, and we only get like one little spin on this planet, and I think a lot of us get trapped into believing that we should go get college degrees, and then we should go get jobs, and then we should. Stop the shoulds and be in the possibility of what if, and give yourself permission, and know that you can't get there from frustration. You can really only get there from gratitude. So how do you start getting grateful? How do you start loving yourself? Because if you want to experience love in your life, you have to start experiencing it today through self-love, through personal gratitude. It has to come through you before it can come to you.
So Susan, this is going to be a very selfish question on my part, because this is something I've been struggling with recently. So is the gratitude, is that there have been so many good things happening, and you would think, and it sounds ungrateful to say, and you start to get on yourself for being ungrateful about all the great things, but what if there's people listening, and for me, because I need this right now, what is a great way to begin that gratitude journey? Because to start expressing gratitude in a way that, you're doing it consistently, and then you're starting to feel that. What recommendations do you have around that?
It's so funny that we're even having this conversation right now, because I just wrote a blog, and I will send this blog to you.
Awesome.
And it's about gratitude. And so I just turned 40 this year, and it was interesting because a friend of mine said to me, oh, you should write a letter to your former self. And kind of talk about like all the lessons you've learned. And what was really interesting is I took her up on that challenge, but my letter, when I started writing it, quickly became a thank you letter. And it was so unbelievably amazing and empowering, because I started to thank my younger self. And so I would say, no matter what age you are, you have a younger self that you really need to say thank you to, because if you can appreciate where you came from and the fact that you made it to where you are, that then you can stand in gratitude right here in this moment. And the reason I wrote the blog, and I literally wrote it 2 days ago, is I was sitting on the couch in this new home in Mexico and feeling I was feeling really overwhelmed, and somehow I opened up my computer and I started to read this gratitude letter that I wrote to myself on my 40th birthday, and it immediately, in the moment, as I was saying thank you to my past, it put me in such great appreciation in the present. And it's like, I think that so many times when we look back at our lives, it's the should've, could've, would've, why didn't I wasn't enough. And that just brings our present down. It's like, I don't know why we have permission to really talk badly about our past selves. Oh my God, I was so naive. I was so stupid. I was so dumb. But you know what? You were also an adventurer and curious, and you'd never done it before, and this was your first time, and you made it through, and you've had amazing moments of joy, and you've met amazing people, and you've been on a unique journey that only you have been on, and I'm glad that I've got to do it in this body, and that I was healthy, and that you were energetic and curious, and I thanked myself for raising my hands, and for the times that I looked stupid, and how important it was for me to be okay when people didn't like me, and that I kept moving forward and kept being a loving person. And like that, I don't even know if that makes sense, but be grateful for where you came from so that you can stand in gratitude for where you are, so that you can be grateful for where you're going.
That is fantastic. And I think I have my action plan, which is to write a love letter to myself, or write a thank you letter to myself. So for all the listeners, because this is something I've been struggling with a lot in the past couple of weeks, but take that time to sit down and write this, and imagine writing a love letter to your, one of your best friends, or to your spouse or significant other. It's like, imagine like just oozing that kind of love out towards yourself, because so often we give, but we don't send it back or like really grow it inside ourselves. So, and Susan, I wanted to ask you about, because this is something I know that you and I both have dealt with, and it's one of the hardest and most challenging things that I've ever gone through. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about your mom and that time with the cancer, because I can tell, from meeting you, from our discussions, and even more from the story that you've been telling today, what an impact that she has had on you and helping you show up in the world, in stepping into your greatness and growing. And listeners, really pay attention, because Susan uses right here, right now a lot. There is so much power in overcoming your procrastination to step into your greatness, to act, and to move, to love right here, right now. So you're going to hear her say that all the time, but really pay attention when she does. It's not just like a buzzy catchphrase. She truly means it from the bottom of her heart. So Susan, can you talk to the listeners a bit about that journey of discovering that your mom had cancer, and what that put you through, but also what you learned from it? Because unfortunately, many of the people listening to this show have experienced loss already in their life, or are going to experience loss at some point. So can you give some insights on what you learned through that, how you grew, and what things have helped you through that portion of your life?
It's such a big question, right? The death and loss of a parent, it really is a huge question, and I'm trying to sit here eloquently figuring out where, what direction I want to go into. And so let me just take a deep breath and kind of check in with myself.
Absolutely.
I think I learned in the day that my mom finally died, there was a maturing that took place, and I had to, and I told you this, Brian, that after my mom died, I spent about a year very angry, and I didn't even really know I was angry, because I was in just I was just trying to manage it all. But once I look back on it, and hindsight's always 20/20, I spent a year very angry, and what I realized for me is how much I was very angry that I had to take the personal responsibility in my life for my own joy. Like my mom, and I've been very blessed with this, my mom was my joy in a lot of ways. Like if I ever felt bad, or if I ever, she was a mom I think most people would really want, with respects to if you ever felt bad, you could just pick up your phone, and she would just make you feel better. And she was a joy-seeking being, and it was an absolute gift to be able to have her as my mom, because that joy just kind of spilled over on me. And when she died, I was responsible. And I think that that's the message that I want your listeners to really embody, that however you learn that message, maybe it's not through having a great parent, it's through having a really crappy parent, where you learn at a really early age you're responsible. The reality is, you are responsible for your life. And what I would like you to do and understand, and what I want for you and for people, is I want you to feel good and take responsibility for feeling good. And knowing that you create it. You're the creator. And it's not just the creator of stuff and jobs and money. It's the creator of the joy and the fun and the excitement and the fulfillment and the happiness. And that is your responsibility to create. It's nobody else's. Mm-hmm. And that's what my mom taught me through her death. And it took moving through quite a bit of anger to actually embrace that responsibility. And I still struggle with it, because that's exactly what I'm struggling with right now during this move. Is I am responsible for creating my own happiness here. You know, in all this change and in all this difference, and in the death of Los Angeles and moving to Mexico, there's so much beauty in it still, I am responsible. I have to stand in my own. Nobody else can make Susan Leahy happy. Mm-hmm. Nobody else can make you happy.
And Susan, so, I mean, all of this, I mean, that message really, for the listeners, first off, when I first met Susan, we talked for a bit, and we found out that I let her know that my mom had recently passed away from pancreatic cancer, and she said, "Oh yeah, my mom passed away from cancer." She goes, "What was your mom's name?" And I said, "Janet." And she goes, "That's my mom's name."
My mom's name.
And then she's like, "What was your middle name?" And I said, "Elizabeth." She goes, "That's my middle name."
My middle name.
And it was one of those, so my mom didn't believe in coincidence. She was very faithful. She believed in God, and she had a very, very, unshakable faith. And so she called them God incidences. So there was no coincidence. You know, this was someone you were meant to meet. And so for me, that was a God incidence, to meet Susan, to get to share in this. And already she's touched my life tremendously. And even just now going in this interview, the 1-year anniversary of my mom passing away is 2 days from now. It is this Saturday. And so July 18th. And so for me, hearing those messages for you, as you're reflecting with hindsight, I'm still in it, you know, and I am angry, and there's times where I don't know what to do, or I'm unsure, or I'm scared, or I'm hurt, and so many of the messages that you shared impact me directly, that, you know, it's recognizing, because what you said, I was like, holy shit, that's hitting me too, that, you know, I've been so blessed to have a mom and a dad who love me and always bring joy to my life, and a brother who does the same, and, you know, and it's and now he has a wife who is, you know, a great new addition to our family, and it's but for my mom, you know, it was my mom and dad both bring joy to my life whenever I call them, but they did it in different ways. So when you lose one of those people, you feel like you're missing this whole portion of your joy creation. And I think that's part of the struggle I'm going through, is that I need to create it now. And I know that's what she would want. She would not want me to be sad. She wants me to get out and grow and experience the world. And, you know, it's just really interesting to hear it from you, someone who's been through it. And this ties in with that message from earlier. It's that talking to people who've been through these tough things, and then you turning it to say, well, this is a positive though, and you can grow from it, and it doesn't need to hold you down and scare you. But what I want to ask is, so first, that key piece is recognizing that you are the creator of your own joy, and owning that. What I'm struggling with right now, and something that I believe many people struggle with, is, okay, I recognize, all right, it's my responsibility and my ability to create it. How do you personally keep that from turning into guilt? Because I can very easily go from, all right, Brian, you know, you're the owner of your happiness, be happy, and then I don't find a way to become happy, then I judge or get angry at myself for not doing it. So how do you stay on the positive side of that and keep from turning it into negative energy or judgment towards yourself?
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, I'm not separate from that either. I think it is so I think it's the eternal journey, right? You can either take the path of continuing to feel shitty and be on the hamster wheel, or you can finally choose to kind of jump off and try to generate that excitement, that joy, that energy, the feelings that you do want. But I think the main piece is to know that it's a practice, and that it's a practice. It's a daily practice. It's like anything else. At least for me, it's like anything else. If you want to be a great basketball player or football player, or if you want to be, you know, anything, you have to practice. And I think that joy is a practice. I think that happiness is a practice. Because for me, the power of happiness comes from the words that I repeat in my brain, because just as present as, I'm telling myself I'm a loving, powerful, committed woman, I also tell myself that I'm stupid and that I'm lazy and that I should be more. You hear what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so I can only answer this question by really emphasizing to everybody that I practice. I am not a naturally joyful person. I don't think that exists. I don't think that exists.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, the reason she was so joyful is because she was in the practice. Every day I saw her doing things. My mom was also very spiritual. And so she would read religious verses, and she would write poetry, and she would talk, like it was her practice. And so I think that's, it's the practice of joy.
I think that's incredibly powerful. It's such a universal concept, because, people say if you want to have a great smile, brush your teeth twice a day. And that becomes an unconscious part of most people's routines, is just like, oh, why do you do that? It's like, oh, well, of course I'm going to do that because it keeps me healthy and I smile and I like to smile. And so for me, that's become a new question in my life, is and Jason Goldberg actually introduced me to that idea of how we treat the word commitment, like I'm making a commitment to work out or wake up early and exercise, that we treat it like this heavy burden. Why don't we just treat it like this fun, enabling, exciting thing in our lives that's going to introduce us to more possibilities? So to your point, it's, if you look at it like brushing your teeth, why can't expressing and looking for joy, creating joy in your life, become that systematic or that part of the process?
It needs to be. It has to be.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be like everything else. It has to be. Or it's going to become fragmented, and you're not going to experience it as consistently as you deserve to. I deserve consistent joy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who are in consistent misery, and that seems to be okay. But why don't you have consistent joy?
Yeah.
You do. You deserve it, but it has to be created through the practice that you're doing every day. My husband teases. He's like, everybody should be married to a motivational speaker, and I'm like, no, everybody should be their own motivational speaker. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Is you've got to be your own motivational speaker.
That's amazing. I love that, and I love that message of being your own motivational speaker, because what's really key, like listeners, it's so key to understand that this is not about saying everything is sunshine and rainbows all the time and everything's perfect. It's not saying I'm going to ignore the bad things and never feel bad. It's about recognizing that there is joy in everything, and that understanding that you're going to feel up and down and good and bad. And Susan, would you like to I felt like you added something there to...
I was just emphasizing it's going to be crappy some days, and you're not going to feel good, but what are you struggling towards? And what I'm struggling towards is a happy, healthy, loving, and fun marriage. What I'm struggling towards is healthy, wealthy, happy, and fun kids. What I'm struggling towards is being a loving, powerful, committed woman. So that's what I want your listeners to think about. You're not just struggling towards having $10 million in the bank. You're not just struggling towards having a job with a certain title. You're not just struggling towards having material things, because none of that's fulfilling. Mm-hmm. What the struggle is towards the quality of the type of life you want to create.
Love that.
What is the quality? And to me, I think that unfortunately education and all that kind of stuff, and just the world we live in, we focus so much on the manifestation, the car, the money, and it's not ever about that. It's fun when we can have that, but it's about when you're sitting in the car, do you like yourself?
Yeah.
And I think people should have both. Like, I'm sitting in a fat house in Mexico that has 5 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms and a huge palapa and a pool, and I'm living in a gorgeous space.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, internally, I'm having to catch up because I'm going through a transition. So you can have all the beautiful stuff, but if you don't have the beauty inside, it's not worth it. So for me, that's what I'm struggling towards. I'm struggling towards happy, healthy, loving, and fun marriage. I'm struggling towards healthy, wealthy, happy, and fun kids, but I'm not right there right now.
Mm-hmm.
because I have to go through the transition, and I'm not exempt from the process. As much as I'd like to be.
Just skip it, yeah.
and so it takes an immense amount of courage for me to tell your listeners right now that I'm not there. And I'm only not there because of the transition that I'm going through. And I'm sure that many of your listeners are in a transition. And so I want to ask them, what are they struggling towards? Healthy, wealthy, happy, fun, feeling respected, valued, heard, and what are your words? And then what is your practice? Reading and making a thank you letter and reading the thank you letter. That's one of the things I vowed in this blog was once, if I start feeling down, I'm going to read the thank you letter. That's my practice. And so how are you integrating in your times of transition a practice that's going to help you move towards the quality of life that you're committed to creating?
Wow. This is amazing. I mean, this is really amazing stuff, because I'm sitting here like thinking through, and I'm like, wow, yeah, okay, what are my words? And then I'm like, oh, that's right, I'm giving an interview. I got to ask the next question. But so for the listeners also, noticing that someone like Susan can be this raw and authentic with you, I want you to recognize and really pay attention to that, because most people, especially people that are in a position that many people admire, like many people will look at Susan and look up to her and be like, wow, she is amazing. She's just confident and strong, and I wish I could be like that. What she's doing is helping you recognize that she shares those feelings, and she shares the doubt and the insecurity. It's all there. It's present in all of us. But what she is doing is creating a circumstance that allows her to move past those doubts, fears, and insecurities and step into her greatness, to not feel like she has to be defined by that. So really pay attention to that, and also understand that it's such an amazing thing when a person will be real with you, but it also, now I can almost guarantee you feel more connected to Susan. Because if there was someone who came on this show and was just like, yep, everything's perfect all the time and I'm awesome, it's like, well, great, but there's no relation or connection. Now that Susan has opened that door into her heart so that we can connect with her, now we can really look at ourselves honestly and be like, okay, she does share these things with me, so I can experience that good, that great, that level of wealth, both in my personal relationship with myself and in the wealth that, we define in the world with money or possessions. It's like you can experience all those things as long as you're willing to create. So, Susan, I love the way that you discuss and talk about your family and your husband, because you're already excited like most of the time that I meet you, which I love, and it's like, which you don't have to be all the time, just saying, but I love the way that you present yourself, that you show up, that you smile, and then when you talk about your family, there's even an extra level of excitement. It's again, that authentic, true, deep happiness and excitement. Like when you said, my husband's hot, when I first met you, and you were like really excited, you sounded like, an 18-year-old girl that just is dating the captain of the football team and is like, oh my God, he's so hot. And I was like, you don't see that often, where people are just psyched to be with the person they're with. So could you talk a bit to the audience about relationships in terms of dating and marriage, and if you have a little bit of insight for the guys and the girls individually, I'd be very curious to hear that in terms of how do you find, because I know we touched on it a bit earlier, but when we specifically focus on this topic, how do you find those connections, and what should guys and girls be doing in order to grow in a way that they can really step up when they do meet that right person?
Yeah, and I want to say, and this might be mind-bending for some people to hear, I do not believe that there is the one. I don't believe in that. I think that's such setting people up for failure, and I think that there's lots of ones. I think that love is a choice, even more than it's a feeling. It's that love is a place for you to practice how you treat yourself. So for me, the way I love my husband is the manifested form, the external form of how I'm also treating myself. As highly as I talk about my husband, it's a reminder that I want, and I am, and I'm committed to talking that highly about myself. And I falter on that. It's not like it's, but it's a sense of, I can't, if my husband died tomorrow, if my husband died so we're not projecting it into the future. That I want everyone to know that I would be okay. That my life isn't dependent upon the people that are in my life. Because everyone in your life is temporary. And I'm not saying that in any way to take away from my marriage, because I want to be married to this man for 63 years, and I want to grow old with him, and I would love to die with him. Right? I'd find a way. But I think that sometimes we think that our life is dependent on, and my mom taught me this. Before my mom died, I sat there on her lap and I cried. I was like, Mom, I don't want you to die. And I was crying and I was emotional and I was like, really, I didn't know who I was going to be with my mom not there. And my mother said the most powerful thing to me, Brian. She said, Susan, you're going to do just fine without me. And you know what? She was totally right. Like, she was totally 100% right. And in that moment, I didn't get it, but I didn't need my mom, and I don't need my mom, and I don't need Jared. And so my wanting to be with Jared is different than needing to be. Needing is dependence, codependence. Wanting is energetic love. Do you get the difference?
Yes, yeah.
So I would say, don't look for the one. Look for yourself and really start practicing loving you. And oh my God, I don't know, this is such a big subject. I'm going to tell you how Jared and I fight. We have a mission statement for our marriage, like I already shared. We will be in a happy, healthy, loving, and fun marriage. We wrote it on the inside cover of our wedding album, and we've always called ourselves a team. And so that's one of the things, is that our orientation really is around the team succeeding. And so when we fight, we will say to each other, we will be in a happy, healthy, loving, and fun marriage. And we'll identify, well, I'm not happy or I'm not having fun. And so we'll use that as a context for how we categorize the emotion. And then one of the things that we say to each other is, you know what, Jared? You deserve to feel good and I deserve to feel good, and this doesn't feel good. So what are we going to do to feel good? And now what we're doing, instead of fighting with each other, we're fighting towards feeling good. And sometimes in relationships the answer is very easy. Go have sex. Okay? But sometimes the answer is a little bit more complex. But what you're fighting towards is feeling good. And I genuinely care about him feeling good.
See, that's a really interesting reframing of what a marriage is when you describe it as a team. Because to me, there have been, I played team sports my whole life growing up, and I remember instances where you didn't like another person in that moment. Like, you were a team, you were part of it, but in that moment you were frustrated as hell with them, and you're like, dude, you missed your block, or you let this happen, or someone would be looking at me and be like, Brian, man, you totally left me hanging out to dry. And there's frustration and there's anger there, but it's not like I quit the team. It's like, all right, how do we work together to make sure that doesn't happen next play? How do we grow into this so that we can work towards our goals as a team? So I think that's a really interesting concept, and I'm glad, and I again applaud you for being authentic, because a lot of people might have been listening in a way that's like, oh, well, she's just happy all the time and they're just smiling and having great sex and it's just joy and wonder all the time. And it's like, but I appreciate you being real about that. Yeah. And
it's what it is it's I want to be up. This is real. My life is real. And I don't yell at my husband because I don't want to be yelled at. We're really, really, really careful with how we fight with each other, because we know that this is sacred ground. We argue and we do get upset, but it's always towards the orientation of like, you deserve to feel good and I deserve to feel good.
Right.
And we do. I don't know how, and he's amazing with me. He does not raise his voice. And sometimes he gets too quiet. He's an introvert, so he gets really quiet. And I have to, and I'll say this lovingly to whoever is, whether it's male or female, those of you who are talkers, like, well, you and I are, Brian.
I was gonna, like both of us.
Like you and I, this is fight for us. We have to shut up.
Yep.
Like, we really have to shut up. And one of the things in my trainings that I talk about is that, my husband, who is an introvert, I will ask him a question and then I will literally bite my lip and I will count to 10, because it takes him sometimes that long to process what I said, go back to his well and pull up his information and deliver his genius to me. But I have to create the space for him to be in this relationship with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I found that being, like you said, since we're both talkers, and it's like so these are struggles we both deal with. I remember a big kind of shift for me happened early on in my career. I had just come out of school, and I was in my first career, and I felt like I needed to know everything. I needed to be an expert, because otherwise people wouldn't take me seriously, wouldn't think I was intelligent. And the thing is, again, 20/20 hindsight, of course they didn't expect that. I was 6 months out of college with zero work experience in this field, but in the moment, it felt like if I don't do that, they won't trust me. And then, again, we dig down in the feelings. I won't be connected. They won't love me, blah, blah, blah. But what I learned through reading books and listening to, some speeches and about better communication, the theme that just kept coming up was listen, listen, listen. And one of the biggest lessons in that was not listen in the sense that, okay, I'm going to wait until they shut up so I can dazzle them with the ideas in my head. It's truly listening, like just put your mind off creating your next argument or idea, and just be lock in, make eye contact, stay connected, and allow them to deliver a thought. Allow yourself to be open to something that contradicts the beliefs in your head. And then after you've genuinely listened to them, given them time to express it, then go back and create a response. Because I noticed, me being a talker, and I've been a talker my whole life, it was very easy for me to just be like, oh yeah, well this, and then you find yourself like a dog chomping at the bit, waiting for them to, okay, and now I can talk again. It's, oh, thank God, I was going to explode. But, it's but then when I started slowing down and stepping back, and like you said, even biting your lip at times, I started to connect so much more deeply and genuinely with people. I started to actually notice things I had been completely oblivious to before, and it is so powerful. So, all right, so in this same note of relationships, if we go specifically for men, if you're going to talk to, actually, let's do women first. Let's do women first. So if you're going to speak to women on how to grow into the person that loves themselves, to find, their one or their ones in life, what is the specific advice that you would give to the women listening to this show?
Men are good. If women could really understand how much men love us, then we would stop being so insecure. Men really want to be with us. Men really desire to connect with us. Men really want to be in relationship with us. And women, we doubt that. We question that. We don't believe that. And so I think that sometimes we guard ourselves or get angry. And I think it's also important for women to realize that men are not women. And that the way a man says, I love you, is fundamentally different than the way a woman says, I love you. And owning and honoring the differences between men and women. I went to this amazing seminar a number of years ago, and I thought I knew a few things about men and women, and I had, I was in a happy marriage, I thought, and blah, blah, blah. So I was a little arrogant when I walked into it. And man, it blew the roof off for me, because I realized as a woman, I wasn't acknowledging when my husband said, I love you. When I would be driving home from the market, and I would call Jared and I'd be like, okay, I went and got groceries. He would say to me, hey, Susan, leave the groceries in the car and I'll get them when I come home. And my response to him was, what? Don't you think I can do it myself? And what this seminar really taught me was that was him saying, I love you. Men do not do things unless they want to. Women, we do things all the time because we feel like we have to. Men, when a man opens your door, or when a man comes in, when a man comes and picks you up, or when a man takes your groceries in, or when it's because he really wants to, and he's saying, I love you, I appreciate you. And if you can start holding it like that, then you'll get more of that. So Like you've got to really own that men and women are different. We are different, and so how do you honor that difference and love that difference and really savor that? Because I think that sometimes we look at that difference and we get angry at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to emasculate my man. I want him to feel like a man.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I don't know, and then that's for women.
Mm-hmm. And just on that point, it was funny because as you were talking and you're like, men want to be with us. Men really want to share and connect. I was just sitting there nodding. I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been saying since middle school.
But women, I don't know how to explain this to you, but women really doubt it. Like women are like, I had this really profound understanding delivered to me. Like really, it wasn't until I had my first child, because I'll be honest, like being a man, a part of the pregnancy experience, I'm like, that's gotta suck. Has no choice. The woman has no choice. The man has 100% choice. And the fact that my husband was with me through all of that, just out of his choice, made me love him more. Because I don't know if I would have been with him through through all of it. Like pregnancy's mind-bending. Like, the growth of the body and the changing of this and the moods and the blood and the juiciness of all of it. And oh my God, like I had no choice, but he had 100% choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, men want to be with you. And it's powerful.
That absolutely is. I mean, and especially, and even for the, like, again, sitting here as a man listening, a single man who a lot of times is doubting himself and is like, man, for some reason, I think we get so in our own heads about our own insecurities that we think everyone else outside is secure as hell and kicking ass and no doubts. And so we're just like, we have this fear that if we open ourselves up or we go introduce ourselves to someone, that they're going to pull back the curtain and see who we really are, and that we're not, we don't have it all together, and we're afraid and we're insecure and we weren't sure if they were going to like us, when in exactly what you're talking about, that person is experiencing those same things. The girl that I'm walking up to nervous as hell has a lot of the same fears and insecurities and doubts.
Yeah, she's nervous as hell.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to be valued and seen and loved and held, and men want to be valued and respected and loved and held.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not that far apart, but we are very different.
Right.
So if we can honor the differences and really love the way men choose to love women, and honor and value the way women choose to love. And again, we are speaking about heterosexual relationships, so I do want to be sensitive to that, because the reality is love manifests in all types of forms.
Right, of course.
And so I just happen to be in a heterosexual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of your listeners are not, I think it's about just maintaining and honoring the difference of the person that is loving you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad you said that too, because earlier when you were talking about, your experiences in the relationship, and you're saying, well, men and women are different. Listeners, it's also important to keep in mind every man and every woman is different. Every single person, the generalities that we make around the way a man behaves or the way a woman behaves, like any stereotype, there's a lot of things that really don't hold true with that stereotype about how a person behaves. So to Susan's point, whether you're in a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual, any type, it's about respecting and loving the difference of the person that you're sharing that time with. It's not looking at the difference like a pain in the ass or, well, they need to change that. Celebrate that, share that, love that, support them in that, and then they will do the same for you, because you've got things about you that are different.
And I think that this is what's interesting, is it's also, yes, there's the difference, celebrate it and honor it, but then work towards what is similar. And what is similar is that everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be valued. Everyone wants to be respected. There are those core qualities in which we want to create in relationships, and we can be different and create a similar quality. Like, my husband is an introvert and I am an extrovert. We're very different that way, but we have the same qualities. Like, respected. We want to both feel, valued and heard. We want to be in a happy, healthy, loving, and fun marriage. So.
Yeah, on that note, it was funny when you were talking about your husband saying, well, let me bring the groceries in for you when you get home. I just finished a book that my mom had recommended I read many years ago, and I actually just finished it because, it was something that I said I think that'd be a good way to celebrate her. It's called The 5 Love Languages.
Yes, I love that book.
And it talks about the different ways that people express love, and that many times the reason that people in a relationship don't feel loved is that the other person is expressing love in the way they know how, not in that person's love language.
Yes,
so.
I love that. And please read The 5 Love Languages of Children if you have children.
Oh, actually, yeah, the last chapter they talked a bit about kids and the way that kids express, and I thought that was very interesting because, they're still developing and evolving into the ways that they react to the world and express things. But yeah, guys, I would highly recommend The 5 Love Languages. And you might ask yourself, why would a single 25-year-old guy read a book that's to help people in their marriages? I think there's knowledge and resources in everything if you're willing to look for the lessons, but also, why not learn about how I can be a better boyfriend and a better husband now? Why not learn about those qualities I can...
Right now.
There you go. Right here, right now, so I can embody those things and grow into those things. So that way, I don't have to learn from square one when I get married. That I've worked to create a lot of these things already, and then I can evolve them even more in marriage. So, Susan, we still haven't hit the guys yet specifically. I know we've hit on many things for the women and men together. And so, is there for advice that you would give specifically to men in how to interact with and create strong, supportive relationships with women? What advice would you have for the men like myself and the men listening to this show?
And I'm not saying that this is the magic bullet and it's going to work, all the time. I'm going to just speak from what I've seen and my perspective, but I believe the best way to maintain a healthy relationship is through validation. You have to, for me, and is it I think that women need to be validated more than baby, I love you. Baby, you have no idea how important you are to me. Baby, you have no idea how beautiful your eyes look right now. You know how much I love being with you. Do you know how much I love that we're together? Do you know how, it will drive men crazy because men don't spend that much time validating their other friends. Dude, man, you look great in those pants. You look amazing. Dude, wait, before we go out, do a spin so I can see what you look like. Okay, men don't make it a habit of validating their bros. But watch what women do. Watch how women come together when they're in communal situations. Oh my God, you look so cute. Look at your hair. Oh my God, your shoes. Where did you get your shoes? Oh, your nails. I love those gels. Who did them? Women spend an immense amount of time validating each other. And it's not because we're deficient. It's because it feels good and helps us stay in that place of alignment. And it helps us know that we're in a safe place. Women, you know what the number one predator of women is?
What is that?
Men. Okay, I want you to realize this. The number one predator of women is men.
And predator in what way?
Predator means killing, hurting, maiming. Number one predator. There was a comedian, he's like, man, it's amazing that women even get in cars with men. We're number one and it's true because and I don't think that men really understand this because this goes to the biology. I could spend a whole 2 days on this, but women are biologically we're physically not as strong as men. Now hold that with a grain of salt. People out there going, what? I'm just strong. Women are strong, blah, blah, blah. But if it was a hand-to-hand combat with my husband and I, my husband would win. So inherently, women are needing to know that they're safe. And the way that women help each other feel safe is through validation. And it's through validating and then revalidating and then validating again. Watch how women interact. That is how women validate and know that it's a safe space. we sit and we look at each other and we tell each other how pretty we are, how much we like your hair, how I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for calling. You have no idea how important you are to me. I love you so much. God, I'm so glad we're friends. How much do we gush over each other? Okay, and men don't get it because men don't need it the same way women do. And so this is what I say to you, is validate even when you don't feel like validating. And you validate just because you know it will help her feel safe.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point because, I've heard, you usually see it in movies and TV, but you hear people saying like, well, I told her I loved her this morning, so why did I, oh, well, yeah, she knows that, but like so many situations, people, even if they know it, that validation can be, is deeply appreciated. And it was funny, as you were talking, when you said validation originally, I was like, yeah, well, men definitely want validation. They want to feel security in the relationship, that she loves and appreciates what we're doing, that she feels supported. We want that as well. But when you actually dug into that kind of the social dynamics between the ways that girls interact versus guys, I was like, wow. There's a whole nother layer of depth there where guys definitely want validation too, but in the way you're describing it, it's like girls really thrive on it to a deeper level because of the way that they usually interact. And that's...
It's and I will tell you, it's still in my marriage, it still trips my husband and I up because I'll go upstairs and I'll primp and get something ready and do something. And like, I know if I walk downstairs with a group of my girlfriends, there would be some comment. But I will walk downstairs and I will walk downstairs as if I'm almost like a bird in the wild trying to get his attention, right? and so I have to keep reminding myself that he isn't just a woman. He's not going to see it the way a woman sees it, and that's okay. And so I will set my husband up for success, and I will look at him and I'll say, Jared, tell me that I look beautiful. Tell me that you like my hair. And so I have committed to supporting him in those moments when I get into like I'm looking for a compliment. I don't expect my husband to be a mind reader. I don't get angry at him when he's not. But I also do try to set him up for success and let him know that I'm looking for validation. Because we are so fundamentally different, and I can only be who I am, and he can only be who he is, and we have to find a way to love each other in that. And I know that he's not going to always read my mind and know when I need validation, so I'm committed to letting him know, what, I would love it if you'd bring me flowers this week. It would really give me joy if you'd write me a poem this week. And so it's that sense of set your partner up for success.
And I think there's so much power in that, because what you're describing is, one, effective communication that can, that is everywhere in your life. If, communicating with a boss on how they want an assignment to be completed, communicating with your spouse, your significant other. But I also it's really fascinating to listen to these things. And I love, one, like I've said many times, how honest and genuine you're being in this, but two, it's like getting the female perspective, because for everybody listening, and especially the girls, I will tell you as a guy, we miss it a lot. Like what you're expecting us to notice and what you're thinking is just going to be so obvious. We're oblivious. Like, I've been in many relationships where a girl was like, really? You didn't even see it? You didn't even, you had no idea, and you're like, I didn't even know that mattered. It's like you're getting, it's like you're getting asked questions in a class, and you read one book, and there was this test is on a totally different book, and you're like, well, and
female
so,
and male, we're in different books. We have different signs, different books.
So I love what you said in terms of, and I think you brought this up before and again now, and I think it's crucial, is setting up the people to succeed in your life. That's your coworkers, your family members, your friends, your dates. Like, if you start creating the story that, again, like we talked about, the negative story and things are going to work out negative, you look for that proof. If you start creating the positive story and looking for proof and working to create that, you can do that same thing and totally turn around what was once a negative circumstance and create a strong, supportive relationship, whether that's in dating and marriage or just in the relationships that you have in your life.
And it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
You are in charge, and you are the creator of your own life. And I will tell you that this interview for me has been just as cathartic as anything. as I'm sitting in my own life transition, as I'm sitting in my own kind of space with my marriage, kind of feeling this sense of feeling isolated, because of the transition I'm in, it's like these types of conversations, these types of committed conversations that are about creating a positive story, being in a space of gratitude, it's uplifting me, it's reminding me, it's helping me take a greater level of responsibility for me. So this has been, you have no idea how I'm so grateful that we're having this interview right here, right now, because it is going to support me in continuing to be the creator of my existence, because I know I'm responsible. So I love you, Brian.
I love you too, Susan. Like, really, I'm feeling the same things, because and you know what? At the times that we're feeling down and weak and isolated and alone, we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear it's on me. It's like, why can't it be somebody else? Like just somebody else make me happy. But
right.
On the other side of that, when you own it, when you say, okay, it is on me, and I can do this, like I believe in me and I can make this happen, which I've been struggling with recently. I've had a lot of down days and haven't felt gratitude and been confused and scared, and and I know a lot of the emotion leading up to this weekend is tying into that, and it's like, but having these conversations with you, and especially with your experiences and you sharing, it's like it has helped me to recognize again, and to the listeners, notice that someone like Susan, who many of you like at the start were like, wow, she's reached that level and she's got it all figured out. She said she needed the reminder as much as I did and as much as many of you do. So this is such a powerful lesson to have, like a mentor and a coach like Susan who is reaching out to you and letting you know we all feel this. That means everybody, your favorite sports athlete, your favorite businessman, they have these feelings, doubts, fears, and insecurities. But you can create through that. You can own it. You can feel it. You can dive into the emotions, allow yourself to be down, allow yourself to be scared, and then work to bring people like Susan into your life, because she's been an amazing friend for me in the short time we've known each other. And then work to create, work to find a new angle, to redirection, to communicate more effectively with that person. And all of a sudden you'll find yourself living in a totally different reality. And you haven't gone somewhere new and things haven't changed. You have changed how you show up and how you look at the world right here, right now, if I may steal a certain phrase.
Right here, right now. Your life is real. There is no real world. There's only the real world that you're creating right here, right now. It's real.
Mm-hmm.
You're the creator of it.
So Susan, this has been so much fun and amazing for me, and I loved how we just kind of went with it and flowed through it, because I did not plan for it to go many of the directions it did, but I'm so glad it did. So I think we're at a point where we should wrap up, because as much as I know we could talk all day, I know our listeners are going to have some other things to do, and I know they've gotten plenty of value. So first off, what I'd like to ask is, where can they go to learn more about you? Because I'm sure after this interview, they're going to be wanting to watch your videos and get much more information on you.
You can type my name into YouTube and Susan Leahy, that's Leahy, or you can go to my website, Susan Leahy, Leahy.com, SusanLeahy.com. And I'd love to hear anybody's thank you letter. If they write it, they can send it to me at info@SusanLeahy.com.
There you go, guys. So there's an incentive, and you know what, Susan? Here, I am making a commitment to you to do that within the next 24 hours. That I will write a love letter to myself and send that to you.
And I will send you mine so we can share.
Awesome, perfect. So for all the listeners, if you'd like to share that with Susan, to share your love letter that you're writing to yourself, you can reach out to her. What was it? Info@Susan Leahy?
Yep, info@SusanLeahy.com.
Okay, fantastic. And also, for everyone listening, if you go to SusanLeahy.com, that's SusanLeahy.com, and you type in your name and your email address, you will get a free Confident Public Speaking audio course from Susan. So this is something that I don't care if you're the most outgoing extrovert or the shyest introvert, we can all benefit from improving our ability to speak and communicate. So definitely head on over to SusanLeahy.com to check that out. So, Susan, I always like to close out my interviews with the same question. And I'm really, like, as I'm saying it right now, I realize I set it up the same way every time too. But, so now, and how old are you now, Susan?
I'm 40 years old.
What's a 4? I thought you said 4. I was like,
I'm 4. I am 4. I'm very new.
I'm new to the world. I've matured quickly. Yeah. So at 40 years old, if you could go back and talk to yourself, and I think this question holds a kind of an extra level of gravity for you, especially considering how tumultuous the college graduation time was for you. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, knowing everything you know now, what would be the advice you would give to yourself at that point when you were graduating college?
Be in even more joy. Thank you for being you. I would be in gratitude. I would probably stand in front of myself and I would read the thank you letter that I wrote. Because it's not about doing anything different. It's about being completely thankful for what you did do, because it got you to where you are, and that is where you are. You are where you are. And I think that, I would read that thank you letter.
Wow. I love that. So, for all the listeners, there's even more incentive to write that letter and read it to yourself and share it with Susan so that you guys can share in that moment as well. And also be sure to let her know that you heard about this message on this interview so she can celebrate that with me. So for everyone listening, and Susan, I'm going to wrap up here, but if you can hang out for just a minute or two after the call. So for all the listeners, as we wrap up today, thank you so much for listening, and I just want to send a huge shout out and love to Susan for doing this, because this was so much fun, and I believe something that is going to impact so many people. So if you would like to learn more about Overcoming Graduation, you can always subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher. You can also go to overcominggraduation.com to subscribe to the mailing list and see a full list of all the episodes, YouTube videos, and a bio about me. You can also check out Overcoming Graduation on the YouTube channel, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you'd like to reach out and contact me directly, please send an email to brian@overcominggraduation.com. So Susan, I love you for this. This was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing with my audience today.
Thank you, Brian. Keep doing the good work.
I will. All right. And so we will wrap up here. Guys, go out, write that letter for yourselves, and have a fantastic day. 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 Have a fantastic